Or all right, Thomas Brown.
What's up?
We are on, okay, and we are recording this, and I'm recording interviews. I've had some good interviews with some really interesting people, and then there's you.
And then there's me.
All right. So anyway, uh,
People will understand that by the time this is all done.
yeah, that's right. So anyway, we're gonna have fun together. We're gonna have
Yeah.
a conversation, and we hardly ever talk, really, honestly.
It's been a while.
Yeah, we don't talk anywhere near as much as I'd like to. Very
Agreed.
often, and I appreciate the way you are in the world. Okay,
Ditto.
and so I've been looking forward to this interview because it's the series, the whole thing. That the way that I've titled this, Thomas, is it's called Brother Talk. Okay,
Brother talk. I dig it.
and my very first one was actually with my brother, my brother Chuck, who converted to Islam and was ending Ramadan. And so we had this talk about what that means and what it means to raise kids in Islam in the United States and so forth. So I consider you a brother, and so this is so important.
Far out. Right on.
Talk with you as a brother. So tell me, how did we meet? What's your connection to Shadow Rock in terms of your own frame of reference? Okay.
So we met. we had a loose affiliation without even knowing it via UCC.
Yeah.
And I had gone on a walk across the country with Eric Elness, who was the person that kind of started the whole Crosswalk America for progressive Christianity, finding people that didn't agree. The mission, the idea was to find people that didn't agree and then like meet with them and find a place where we can agree on Christianity. I went as a non-follower of Christianity because I don't consider myself a Christian. I went, but I really resonated with the value system, and to me, a lot of the platform transcended Christianity. Like you didn't have to be a Christian to be like that makes sense, and that's why I went. I was in the midst of an existential crisis, one of many in my life, and so I went across the country. So we had like a loose affiliation without knowing it. And then, and it's important to know that because that experience of walking from Phoenix to Washington, D.C., and mind you, I was part of the film crew, did a lot of walking, but I also had a support vehicle. And I was part of the documentary team for that walk. But that walk inspired me to take on my own mission and my own journey. And I had lost a brother to suicide in 2001. I lost my brother, Mark Brown, to suicide in 2001. And, as you would assume, anybody who has a traumatic loss like that, it's very difficult to navigate, especially during the time that it happened. It still wasn't, a hip thing for men to say like, oh, I have an emotional reaction to this. Help. Someone help me to navigate these waters. And so I didn't say help. My brother obviously didn't say help.
Yeah.
And I didn't say help. And I experimented a lot with a plethora of drugs. I'm very lucky that I didn't get into any trouble. I was one of those. I never had to go to rehab. I never lost a job. I never hurt anybody, just myself. And through that, I just didn't have a sense of self, and that is very important. We'll get back to that. I didn't have a sense of self. I didn't have any self-confidence. I was, you know, didn't know my place in the world. I was already confused. I wouldn't say that my brother's suicide put me in this existential crisis that I found myself in for a decade, in and out of peaks and valleys of it, but it didn't help. It was the last drop in the bucket. And so I sought out therapy. Um, I had a life coach, an emotional coach, and did a lot of work. And I ended up meeting somebody in 2010 who had lost his brother to suicide. Now, we didn't know this when we first met each other. We met each other at the time. I worked in Parks and Recreation for the city of Scottsdale. I was working at the park that my brother worked at for about 10 years before he took his own life. And there was actually a tree with a plaque dedicated to my brother out there. So in walks this guy, Zachary Chips, and he's got beautiful tattoos, like just murals, like well thought out conceptual murals of art, uh, cut into his flesh. And I just loved it. And we had a lot of common ground with music. And it wasn't until a month later we met up to just hang out, two guys drinking coffee, just, appreciated each other's company and wanted to learn more. He then, he was reading a book called My Ishmael, and I had just finished the book Ishmael by Daniel Quinn. So I was like, oh, that's funny. We're kind of like reading the same series, like at the same time. That's wild. And during our conversation, I tell him about the loss of my brother, and then he reveals to me the loss of his brother. And that was the first time I had met somebody outside of my family that had lost somebody to suicide. And that was a huge step for me, because it's like there's somebody out there that just knows the feeling. So I'm really big into providence and synchronicity, and I don't like, and I understand, like, we get to create a lot of those belief systems. A lot of people believe them and they see them as truth. I see it as like, kind of like a truth that I play with. I don't try to put it on anybody else. It's just like something that I use as a blueprint to navigate the world. I try not to take it too seriously. I try to have fun with it. But to me, I believe that if there is a God, if there is a cosmic will, that synchronicity is its language. So first we're reading the same book. Then we have the connection through suicide. And if that wasn't enough, the fact that we made our connection at the place that my brother worked at. And then I find out a couple weeks later, I was like, hey, Zach, what's your birthday? Zach has the same birthday as my brother. I'm like, dude, there's something more. There's something more about this, rather than just two dudes getting together, talking about babes, basketball, and drinking beer. There's something more.
Not that there's anything wrong with those topics.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Right.
But like,
go
I have a lot
further.
of I have a lot of relationships like that. And like, if I see something, if I feel like the universe is speaking to me, I want to find out what that is.
Yeah.
So we had this conversation one night. I was to make it even weirder, I was dating a girl I was seeing a girl that was part of a pinup organization called Suicide Girls. Let's not get into the debate of how weird that is, about that title, that name. But I was photographing this like community party for her and all the Phoenix Suicide Girls. And it's like a pinup group for alternative beauty. That's what it is. So I called up Zach and I was like, hey man, like the bar scene's just not my scene. Come hang out with me. I'll buy you a beer, but like, let's hang out. And I told him about Crosswalk America and walking across the country and how I was like needing something like that. He's like, I would totally go with you. I was like, all right, let's do it. And he's like, and let's do it for our brothers. And it just like dawned on me, like, of course, like I've always wanted to like do something to honor my brother. I wanted to to and not just like create like an organization or like raise money for something. Like I wanted to go out and like be a part of something that allowed me to interact with people and learn from people. And I just didn't know how to do it. Obviously I was going through like one of my biggest crosses to bear has been codependency. And so I don't think I would have done it on my own. And I needed Zach at that time to kind of give me that push and that extra confidence and courage to leap. And it was at that time that I was starting to do, that I was doing research for the bike. We decided we were going to ride our bikes cross country for suicide awareness and the healing power of art. We were going to leave from the Golden Gate Bridge, north of the Golden Gate Bridge, and ride our bikes over 7,000 miles in a zigzag across the country and end at this art retreat center in upstate New York called the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors.
Yeah. Now, starting at the Golden Gate Bridge, I mean, that's significant.
Yeah. And there was a purpose to the route, is that because so many people in the Bay Area have chosen to end their lives at the Golden Gate Bridge by jumping off, we thought that like beginning was signifying and honoring those that have lost to suicide.
Yeah.
And that ending at the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors would be, would be symbolizing the idea of transcendence through art and creativity, which I think is the ultimate glue between human connection.
Yeah.
Even if we're just talking about life, we're still in that moment, we're a storyteller. And that's a form of creativity, how you share yourself.
Yeah. And I want to come back to that in terms of art as a universal language for
right on.
Share. I want to come back to that, but
all right. But it was through the community building and meeting with different organizations, meeting with new people, and finding places where we could talk about our message in the hopes of getting some support is when I met you and when I was introduced to you and introduced to Shadow Rock. So you've always been part of the Rise. Rise is the banner in which we did the bike ride, and Rise is an acronym for Revolution Inspired by Self-Evolution, which to me means, you want to change the world, you got to change yourself first. So that was how we met. That's the long story with some backstory. We got an epilogue, we got a little bit of a story, and I guess this podcast, this vlog will be the prologue or the epilogue.
No.
It's just going to be part of it. It's chapter 1.
It's a chapter. It's a chapter. That's all I want to say, because I'm not willing to let go of your friendship. So it's
okay. Yeah.
It's not an epilogue. Okay.
I didn't mean it like that, but I see.
I just want to be clear. You're stuck with me. You're stuck with me. Okay.
Ditto, brother.
All right. Okay. So I remember you riding your bicycle down the aisle at our sanctuary in order to get some support. And I don't know that I'm sorry, it was so long ago. I don't know how much support we ended up giving you, but we certainly believed in your mission. And one of the things, Thomas, that really, I mean, there's a lot of things I appreciate about you. Okay. Well, one of the things is that the idea that you wanted to ride across the country, but not to make a statement, really, not to make a statement, but to really to hear what the universe was saying to you.
Yeah.
And then be able to invite other people along the way, all the way across the country, for them to listen as well, and to encourage them to use art as a way to hear and speak and to share. That art really has this catharsis and therapeutic piece to it, as well as showing our shared humanity. And I heard that from you consistently from day one, and I said, "Oh my God, I want to be in the company of this guy." So
I mean, what's interesting is that like the things that, like, I get fired up when I see tragedy like what we're experiencing in this year of 2020.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like I get
Yeah.
fired up. That's when like the Rage Against the Machine
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
really gets triggered. But when it comes to like shedding tears,
Yeah.
it's so weird. Like I used to always be a crier, and maybe that if that was just part of my journey. Now it takes a lot more of something happening in my life to move me to tears. Like I feel like I have a lot of and I'm not saying the crying is bad and that like I didn't have the tools back then and you need to get tools so you can stop crying. That's not what I'm saying. Crying is
Right.
good.
Right.
Crying is just a form of release. So but I feel like I had the tools to be able um to kind of understand an experience that I'm having,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe I just haven't had an experience that has challenged me or pushed me or moved me to a point that I want to express myself with with shedding some tears. Um, but when I watch a movie or when I listen to music, that's when that's when I'm inspired and the tears are invoked. And the new Tool album, they hadn't had an album in like over 10 years and it came out in September. And I remember Sharon and I, that's my partner.
Mhm.
Um, we, we turned off all the lights, put on some candles, turned on the light inside the Himalayan salt rocks that we have. And we listened to the entire album. And like, I was so moved that like my eyes watered up. And then like, you know, I'm a big nerd. I love Marvel movies. I don't care what anybody has to say about it. There's some really powerful mythological elements in those. And in Endgame, when Cap hears his microphone in his ear go off, and you hear Sam Wilson, who turned to dust in Infinity War, say, Cap, on your left, which is a playoff of what happened in the Winter Soldier when they met each other, both in the opening of that movie and the ending of that movie. Like I lost it. I was like, oh my god! So I could still be drawn to tears, and it's through art. It's not through like a lived experience of trauma or challenge. It's through art, and it's even through some of the most basic default world art, because the thing about art is even the most, you know, commercially curated piece of art still comes from the human experience. And like the more they want to sell it to you, the more they want to be able to connect with an emotion within the viewer. And that's all. You can't get away from it. Anytime you go to create art, it doesn't matter how commercial it is, it still has a fundamental intrinsic value of humanity, because human only knows human.
Yeah.
So there's like every piece of art, no matter how basic, how default world, how commercial, still has this mythological like collective conscious uh that just spews out and emanates through, and that's why we have such strong responses to it. Like I could look at some of the most commercial, that's why people love Super Bowl commercials more than the Super Bowl.
Now, you're telling me you think Super Bowl commercials are art?
Yeah, you have to be art isn't just, you know, some revolution pretentious mode of expression. Like
Yeah.
art is everywhere,
Yeah.
and it's when with it, you a creative mind, like the primary philosophy of Rise is that above all your life is a masterpiece, that you are the artist that creates it,
And
and your decisions that you make are your brushstrokes.
It's a very existential, philosophical point of view.
I guess.
Okay, all right,
If you say so.
Thomas. It's a very existential. Okay, so you've made reference to now music. You've made reference to Marvel movies. You made reference to a couple of different, I don't know what to call them, art forms or mediums. Okay, but what you're saying, part of what I'm hearing, and I'm reflecting this back to you, and feel free to shoot me down, it is that if it touches the human soul in a profound way, it's art. It
I
doesn't
think so.
to be in a museum are praised or critiqued by pretentious egghead
Critics.
right. It's if it touches something deep inside a human being, it's art.
Yeah. And you know what? There's a lot of people out there that are going to like just vehemently disagree with me. And
That's
that's
okay.
cool. And that's
That's
cool
all right.
too.
Yeah.
Like some
Yes.
people get really offended at I've had reactions from people that they're really offended. I'm like, all right, that's cool, because some people are like, dude, art is just pain. I'm like, all right, I've been moved by a beautiful picture of a flower.
Absolutely.
You know?
Absolutely. I mean, we can talk about beauty, but I want to. But for example, I will say, and I've said it from the pulpit. I'm a Christian minister serving a somewhat Christian church, and I say somewhat because we're all over, we're all over the board here, we're all over the spectrum. But I'll say from the pulpit, I'll say, look, religion, all religions, including our religion, is just a human construct.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is it good for? What it's good for is the way in which it helps us tap into a narrative about what is most authentic about being human. And sometimes that narrative is way up here. And as you talk about Marvel, for example, touching into a mythological kind of discussion, that's a big, high narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's art as well. But it's also art when it's you and it's me and it touches us. And it's especially art when the high and the low, the sacred and the divine, the profane and the sacred, when they touch each other and we live in that space and recognize it.
Well, I think that the whole concept of art is to, if you're moved by it, there's a reflection of you in it.
Ah,
You know what I mean? And
yeah.
like this, if you're triggered by it, whether it's a positive trigger or it's a negative trigger, you have some relationship with the emotion that invoked. And that relationship is based on an experience you had, were adjacent to, or witnessed.
So what is the relationship between in that dynamic? And I think you're absolutely right. Is there a relationship in that dynamic, that realization between that and truth?
Say that again. Is there a dynamic within the relationship between, say that again.
Okay. So you're making me say something I don't even understand. That's
all right.
No, you're supposed to get it the first time. Okay. So here we go. So,
we don't always have to get it the first time. We're human. We're hairless monkeys trying to figure out the fact. We still haven't figured out the fact as hairless apes that we're living on a living starship that is floating around a self-contained atomic explosion that is also hurling through the void. All right.
Yeah.
So like we're all still trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And it is not just the planet that's hurtling through the void. It's the whole solar system.
Yeah.
Hurtling through. And you're right. It's all hurtling. It's like, Right? It is.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's see if I can recapture what we were talking about here. And that is this notion that when something evokes within me a response that is really, really deep and human, that is what makes that art.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So my question then is, what is the relationship between that experience, that dynamic between that which evokes it in me and the experience of being human? Is there a connection with truth?
Yeah. I
Well,
would say, I mean,
if
it's,
it was so obvious, you say it like it's obvious.
well, I think,
Why didn't you
you
get it
know,
the first time?
because I was probably thinking about what I just said and not
And
paying attention.
all right,
Because
all right,
I
go
mean,
ahead.
it's I don't like to get on this whole train of like your truth because we're living in a world
I,
where there are multiple truths.
I
But
know. That's why
but
I
if
asked you.
yeah, like if what is truth is that you're feeling something. Like I once had this conversation with this homeless Asian woman. The fact that she was a woman or Asian is irrelevant, but she was kind of like she became a mythical figure to me. So you know what I mean? Like she she blew my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was like, I feel like I'm living in an illusion. And she's like, so what if you are? You're still experiencing it. So if like yeah, the is it truth? Is the emotional feeling that I am responding to while witnessing a piece of art, that is a truth that yes, I am feeling this because whatever that thing is, like let's take the suicide girls thing for a second. When somebody just lost someone to suicide, I have found 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100 times, let's say that when I bring up that story to somebody, it's part of my story, so I'm going to tell it. There's a lot of like cosmic weirdness in it, a lot of providence. Excuse me. If somebody had just lost someone to suicide, it could be day, week, month, year. I usually don't tell that. There's not a need to tell my story to somebody who just lost somebody to suicide within the day or the week. But I'm just saying, time is irrelevant. Usually, if they haven't come to a place of acceptance in their journey of loss, they're going to be negatively triggered by that aspect of my story. They're going to be appalled by the fact that there's an organization out there that is a reflection of alternative beauty called Suicide Girls. Now, yes, it's pinup, but to them, it is an expression. And yes, that expression is to try to invoke, a sex appeal to turn people on. But I still think that on a base level is still a form of artistic expression. Let's not get into like the whole debate of whether or not it's right or wrong. I'm not here to talk about that, just the foundational level. But just knowing that exists, that organization exists, is very triggering to people. That trigger is an emotional response based on an experience that they had losing someone to suicide, viewing something outside of themselves that to others is an expression of their creativity. So that's art. Let's just say that's art. And these people over here are triggered by it. And they're only triggered by it in either negative or emotional way is because they have some type of life experience connection to it. That's what makes it truth. That they're experiencing something, that
Yeah.
they're having an emotional response to something because it triggers a memory that goes back to an experience in life and what emotion that experience gave them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think it does make sense, and I would compare it to, and it It has nothing to do with the sexuality dimension of pinup girls, what I'm
Mhm.
compared to, and that is um, there was a LGBTQA uh, and I congregation in Phoenix, and uh, they ran a around Easter time. They ran a hunky Jesus contest.
Yes.
All right, all right, and and um, do you think that evoked anything from people?
Oh yeah, and I thoroughly enjoy that it did.
Okay, it absolutely did. It absolutely did.
Wow.
Uh-huh.
Where was I that day?
So what? Right, right. So pinup suicide girls
Mhm.
and hunky Jesus contests. I mean, they are really pushing some boundaries, some edges here of our consciousness individually as well as collectively, because we're all products of this society and blah blah blah. And so we are what we are as products of the society. But when art invades those protective social membranes, um, that's art.
Mhm.
That is art, and we can either celebrate it because maybe I'm gay, and that a hunky Jesus contest put on by a church. Oh my God, that might be a place in a community where I would be accepted and loved and cared for and safe, right? And
Yeah.
so that evokes that. But someone else who has their head so far up their conventional pro-establishment cultural butt, um, it's going to be offended.
Yeah.
But it's still art. It makes that strong, solicits that strong reaction to it. That makes you look at, well, really, what is the essence of life, of my life?
And that's the thing that like if you're triggered by something, whether if it's a negative response, there's a way to talk about this if it's a positive response, but maybe it's not that important at this moment. But if you're triggered by something, the thing that usually people don't get to is that they don't ask themselves, why am I triggered?
That's right. That's right.
You know, it can become, and this is where Rise comes in, that I, even in the book that I'm writing, I'm on the third draft. I actually completed two drafts of it so far. So
Wow.
there is two versions of a completed book. Whether or not it's good, that's the jury's still out on that. Um, but the whole philosophy is that, because I'm a nerd, I love comic books, I love television, I love movies, and I love them because they're ancient stories just being retold over and over and over and over and over again. That's and that's humanity's. Yeah, it's commercialized and dumbed down to a degree. I mean, but if you're looking at it with the right pair of eyes, you're looking for those. It's not it's the intention of the viewer of what you're going to get from any type of content that you consume. So
Mhm.
what the hell was I just saying?
Well, you were,
I had a point. I was going somewhere, and my headlights turned off.
uh, yeah, it's okay. It's all right. Uh, so, and I think we'll come back to it. Okay.
Mhm.
But we live in a season now. We live in a time with pandemic, racial injustice, social unrest, civil disobedience, on down the line, and a lot of people are experiencing this in terms of the way they interpret it is, oh my God, the world is coming to an end, and so forth and so forth down the line. I'm watching people in the way that they respond to all of this. And you got a great story about what happened in Scottsdale today. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to tell you what my response wants to be.
Yeah.
But first I want you to tell the story for the sake of the interview. And then I'll tell you what my reaction is. And this, I'm going to circle back around to what art does. Okay? So,
Okay.
story.
So obviously, I don't know when this is going to be aired, but Friday, today is Wednesday, and the Friday before that, today's the 24th. And the Friday before that, there was a mandate in Scottsdale to wear a mask. Now that mandate was kind of made moot when Maricopa said no, every city has to wear a mask.
Yeah.
So we have this council member, Guy Phillips, who had already got in trouble for reposting on his Twitter and Facebook this video or meme or something that was a very racist that implies that COVID stands for Chinese originated virus, blah, blah, blah. I don't know the rest of the acronym.
Oh my God.
Which, like, this person's a council member. I don't have a degree, but I know through research that I did that didn't take very long that COVID-19, I mean, even Trump brought this up yesterday. Like, what does the 19 even mean? Like, seriously?
Right.
Are we living in idiocracy? Co stands for, is short for corona.
Yeah.
The is short for virus. D for disease. COVID. See? And then 19 stands for the year. So that's where this whole story with this guy started. And of course, he came out and apologized. So he was offended because, like most, like, he was offended by the mandate to have to wear a mask. All right. Because he has he's a white man with a brittle spirit.
Yeah.
It has been my mantra for the last month. White America has a brittle spirit. Because if you think that, like, wearing a mask leads to totalitarianism, like, that's the hill you're going to die on of all the injustice in this country.
Yeah.
All right, whatever. I'm not here to change your mind.
Yeah.
It's easy to have a discussion and disagreement with an intelligent person. It's really hard to have a discussion with an idiot. Just don't. All right, for your own sanity and your own mental wellness.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Just
absolutely.
Smile, turn around, and walk away. Maybe give them a hug or a virtual hug.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was supporting a protest, a non-mask wearing protest.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, like, if you're anti-mask, you're anti-Halloween. Because if you're really into Halloween, like, this is your moment, all right? You finally get an opportunity to have Halloween more than once a year, all right? Jazz that mask up. Get creative. Use your creative spirit and make some beautiful art that you can wear around your mouth and nose. So he was supporting this anti-mask protest that went on today. So there's about 150 people at the City Hall in Scottsdale. None of them were wearing masks. There were police officers there, Scottsdale PD. They were wearing masks as far as I could see, as far as I've heard or read. There were no educational flyers being handed out. I understand it would have been a moot point, would have fallen on deaf ears, but, pretend. Yeah. Guy Phillips came out and he wasn't wearing a mask because he was against the masks, and he was with all his supporters that were protesting the mask, the anti-mask rally. And for dramatic effect, before he went up to talk to the crowd, he put a mask on. And as he walked up to the microphone, people were like, "Take the mask off, take the mask off." He grabbed the microphone and twice shouted, "I can't breathe. I can't breathe." And then the crowd cheered. And then he took the mask off and, like, made this expression of, "Oh, I can finally take a breath." Like, and if you don't understand why that's inappropriate or why that's just messed up.
Okay. Absolutely right. You're right in saying that. Nevertheless, for
It was a great show of theater.
but for the wide audience of 68 people who watch this interview.
Or,
Explain what is so wrong with that. Okay.
because there's been a lot of people of color, particularly black men
Yeah.
and women, where they had been choked in some way by law enforcement, and they repeatedly cried out, "I can't breathe."
Yeah.
So,
And
like,
he's wanting to compare the inconvenience and the infringement on his right with the experience of black
being
people.
murdered.
Yeah. And so that's what's wrong with it, right?
Yeah, like,
Yeah. And
does he have the
people-
right to say that?
And
Yeah.
people cheering it. People
Yeah.
cheering it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So this is going to go full circle. Do you have anything else to say about that? I'll go full circle here with the whole art thing.
Yeah, it's just yeah, whatever. There's a lot of things that I want to say, but like I don't want you to lose any more audience members because because I love comedy, and Dave Chappelle is the GOAT of comedy.
Oh yeah.
Comedy, I think, is one of like I think even what you do is close to the same art form of what a comedian does. It's a different level, but it's still through the spoken word, and I appreciate that. But like, there's a lot of dark poetry that is swirling through my brain of like how I would really, like, in somewhat of a morbid comedic way, to express my feelings, and I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this is another interview another time if you're willing. Okay.
Yeah.
God knows, I hope you're
Yeah.
willing. Okay.
Yeah. I would
Okay.
love to be a contributor.
So the thing is, so first, a side note in response to your what I do is comedy. I think you're right, although hardly anybody thinks I'm very funny. Okay, so that my wife even says that on my tombstone, Ken Heinzelman did all these wonderful things, and at the very end it'll say, and he thought he was funny. So I think that's right. And
hey, I'm the funniest person in the room. I don't care if I'm the only one laughing.
Exactly. Thank you. Exactly. And one of the greatest comic forms, and which I am a master at, is beating a dead horse.
Yeah.
Over and over and over again. Okay. So anyway, that's my personal preference. But Thomas, and also the fact that Christian clergy traditionally wear black preaching gowns is a part of the comedy / magic show that we do that points to the great mysteries of life and death. Okay. Now, with that said, that was a side note. What I want to say is that given this circumstance where this guy, and literally guy, right? It's his
guy.
Yeah. Okay, so
I now have a problem with men named Guy.
This guy. We could go on and on. I mean, what's he compensating for?
Yeah. Did your parents already know? Did you change your name, or did your parents know that you were just going to end up this way?
Okay. All right.
Parental Sears.
Again, we're off track. And it's a lot of fun. But as a pastor, I'm a man of peace, okay? Now, I have to tell you, I am not 100% pacifist yet. I hope I grow in my spirit enough to get there. I really do.
Oh, I have a comment on that, but we'll wait.
Okay? I'm not there yet. And I say that to some of my own confession of my downfalling, but also a growing edge spiritually. And the reason I say that is because on the one hand, there are things in life that happen that make us cry. There are some things in life that make us laugh. And then there's this thing that you just described out of supposedly political leadership, in which my initial response is I want to punch him in the throat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually said from the pulpit at least once, some of the things I hear and do, I want to punch him in the throat. So here's my question. Evoking such a strong human reaction, is this guy and what he said, is it art?
Yeah, because politics is theater.
Huh? Oh, say more. I think you're right. So, say more. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there's even like this concept that I've been on, you know, I had this conversation off mic with a guest, and you know, she was telling me about like this, you know, spiritualist came in and was talking about you know, Donald Trump and the negotiation that his spirit had from the other side to take on this life and to be this persona,
Yeah.
and for the world to go through this experience that the world can learn from. And you know, and that the woman was trying to teach to have compassion for that spiritual choice. I was like, that's totally cool. I totally get it. And I love that belief system. It's very playful. It's very creative. And I even dabble in it from some time. And I'll show you how I dabble in it, because my reaction to that personification, that dramatic personification, is maybe the contract that I signed when my spirit came here.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? You know, so
it does. And
like life is theater. Everything
yeah.
is theater. We're all like, whether we're conscious of it or not, we're playing a role. We're always in character for a certain venue, whether it's an intimate relationship venue, whether
Yeah.
it's a work venue, whether it's an artistic venue. Like it's all art.
Yeah.
It's all art. It doesn't, like, of course, like I'm triggered right now, because even if I wanted to decide to put like a negative or positive label on this experience, like why am I triggered by it? I could say that it's dumb and stupid and disrespectful and irrehensible and just wrong, but I mean that's just part of the whole drama of life. There's always going to be resistance. I always say this is the reality of duality. We've got good versus evil. We've got night and day. We've got life and death. We've got male and we got more than just male and female.
Yeah.
But like it's a
your
variety.
Your whole duality thing just broke down. Okay.
It totally did. But you know, crap.
No, it's okay. It's all right. It's okay. I mean, there's so many things that we've just barely touched on that we could go deeper, whether we're talking about comedy or duality, or we're talking about, you know, making a statement or listening.
What the reason why I brought that up is because based on something that you said, the reason why I brought up the idea of like us having, I don't know if I believe in the fact that like I have a soul that has a consciousness. I like that idea. I also like the idea that we're just cosmic energy that reestablishes itself and goes into another form of existence on some level, whether it's a mountain, a tree, or a squirrel, or you know, some weird animal on another planet that I don't even know of. But the idea that when you said, you know, I'm trying to be a pacifist, I struggle with that idea, because let's look at Jesus. You know, the idea of like turn another cheek and allow yourself to be hit. That's still involving yourself. That's a radical way to fight back, but it's still fighting back, and you're still allowing yourself to be part of violence.
Yeah.
You know? And so, like, for me, like, somebody's got to be a sentry on the wall. I don't mean to get all like a few good men on you and you know, I want the truth. You can't handle the truth, you know, but like there are certain levels of fighting back that still has a relationship with violence. Even if you're not the one that is, you know, engaging in the gratuitous form of it.
Yeah. Well, and I would say, yes, we all have a relationship with violence, and we have to figure that out. And there's several things, and this is another conversation altogether. I want to say that I think the turn the other cheek thing is often misunderstood and misinterpreted. That it is a form of resistance, and there's reasons, cultural reasons for that we don't get.
Mm-hmm.
That they got then, but we don't get now. Okay. And so, but I see right now a resistance movement.
Absolutely.
A resistance movement that looks like the best of humanity.
Absolutely.
Most important. And I see a resistance movement that honestly is the best of what it means to be a citizen of the United States in its most aspirational way. Now that's secondary, that's a secondary concern for me. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless, I think true. When I went out to march a couple of weeks ago, there was such a diversity of people, old and young, and different ethnicities and so forth, that I never saw in the 6 years that we worked so hard at Shadow Rock for immigration justice. We never saw such diversity, and I never experienced such unity in that diversity.
Yeah.
I am really hopeful. I hope that it doesn't stop. And I think there's going to be time and time and time again that it's going to try to be suppressed. But I hope it stays right on track.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about it is that they've started to self-policing themselves.
Yes.
Like there's this great meme that I saw where it was like a pregnant white woman, and she's like, if I had the experience of my son going out to get Skittles and never came back, or I had the experience for my son to go out, you know, bowling and never came back, or if I had an experience where
Yeah.
my son was just going to show his wallet and then never came back, and his last words were my name, I'd burn the city to the ground too.
Yep.
Like, for people to like have to not be able to understand like some of the destruction that happened in the beginning, and like what happens when you have a traumatic experience, you know, if you don't have the tools, or maybe it's just been an overwhelming amount of time of abuse, when you finally get fed of it, you rise up in a fiery rage, you know, and then you know, the emotion has kind of like drawn out, and you can bring back reason and logic and mount a much more you know, methodical, well planned out active resistance that doesn't add fuel to the oppressor. They can't use, like, I still read stuff where people are commenting in social media about well, they riot and loot. I'm like, yo, that's been over for a while. They're self-policing themselves now. You know what I mean? Like, you need to get a new argument. I mean, it didn't make sense anyways because you didn't understand.
Right.
You know, you have to understand where that comes from. and you're not willing to.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to tell, I try to tell white people, which I don't know if you noticed, but I'm one of them.
Yeah, so am I.
I tried to tell white people. I'd say, look, I, Ken Heinzelman, am a racist. I am a racist because I'm a product of a racist society. But I am a racist in recovery.
Yeah.
And I can slip anytime, and in fact do. And then I have to start again. But I am a racist. And you may not want to hear it. You are in denial, and your alibi system is deep
Yeah.
and high. But you're a racist too. And I think that's the best we can do as white people. And when we dangle on the pain of that, too bad. We just have to dangle on the pain of it. And we should not expect any person of color to take us off of that hook.
Mm-hmm.
We should dangle on it. There are a lot of people, thousands of people that we know of, and probably thousands we don't know of, people of color through the centuries that have dangled in a very real way.
People of color have a lot more. They're I speak in curse languages, but I'll use the acronym. Their level to tolerate BS
Yeah.
is profound.
Yes.
And like, like I've learned to understand my own racism by decoding certain looks that my friends of color have given me when I've said some ignorant stuff.
Such as eye rolling?
It's more like, man, if you weren't my friend, I'd punch you in the face.
Yeah. Yes.
and like more than anything, like I understand that you don't want to hit me for a multitude of reasons. Like it's easier for a white guy to be angry than it is for a black guy to be publicly angry. Like that's another level of like systemic racism. Like if I'm walking around out in the front and just angry, oh, that's just our neighbor Thomas. But like if Thomas was a person of color, like, oh, dude, there's an angry black man outside. Would somebody call the cops? Maybe a punch in the face would have been faster. But again, their ability to extend patience is profound.
Yeah, and the capacity for these communities to survive. I mean, you take the story you told earlier about the Scottsdale councilman and the people who applauded that stupidity. Mm-hmm. Okay, their capacity for maturity, for understanding, for injustice, for a little bit of pain is nil. It's nothing. They walk around as such entitled babies. Slightest provocation and denial, they have a rally and dare to use a dying man's last words as a correlation to their pain and discomfort is just absolutely absurd. Okay, you're getting me in the punch you in the throat mode, okay? and so I agree with you totally, Thomas, about the measure of people and their communities to, I'm with you.
And to me, like that level, to bring it back to art, like that level of patience is a form of, it's an art form itself.
Oh, well, and look in a more traditional, objective, traditional way that we think about art. Look at the incredible art that has come out of those communities.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about beauty.
Yeah. And everything. I don't want, there's so much from all different types of like musical expression, spoken word, Um, and like not only like if we just look at it on an individual basis, like all of the amazing artists for all the different types of art forms that exist that have come out of it. Like if you want to colonize Mars,
Mm. Mm.
you know, get a large group of people of color and teach them how to be astronauts. You know what I mean? Like they're they're more resilient. They're the most resilient people, the most peaceful, the most patient people. Like like they'd have that down in like a generation. Like we got you.
Yeah. Now, if you want a colony of whiners, all those people that attended the council member and supported the councilman, and put them in a rocket ship and send them. Okay.
You know.
All right.
I mean, it's got to be their choice. Let's say that. Just sending like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
All right. So I mean, a lot of people, a lot of white people, they think Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly invented rock and roll. All right.
They imitated it.
That is not true. Okay.
They're great imitators.
All right. All right. Listen, we could go on, but we can't. I mean, we could, but we won't. I really appreciate this conversation, and
I do too.
Appreciate you, and I hope that you will, come back again. I don't know how many people listen to this thing. I'm actually recording interviews. I'm archiving them, and after I get about a dozen of them, I'm going to start putting them in a wider circulation, that kind of thing. I hope that you come back. But
hey, all you have to do is ask. All you have to do is ask, and like I'll do it. Like I was, I mean, you're the first person that I thought of when I sent that text. So, and I'm sorry it's been so long since we have chatted and talked, but I think about you often. I really appreciate your genuine attitude and your perspective on things, and your support as a human being for all things good and true.
You're very kind and generous. So now you do a podcast, and you've been doing a podcast for how long now?
I started recording in 2015, started posting in January of 2016. Okay. It's called go ahead. It's called Inner Monologue. Oh, it's called Inner Monologue. A new episode comes out every Monday. I usually post it's scheduled to post at 3 a.m. I do know of a few people on the East Coast that listen to it. So I do post it that early so that they can listen to it if they choose to when they're getting ready in their Monday morning. And then I usually on Thursday or Friday, if I have a second episode, a lot of times if I have a returning guest, I will, instead of waiting to post their episode, I will post it on a Thursday or Friday, and that'll just be a week that has two episodes. The concept is just creating a platform for people to come on and share their story. I usually take the first 15. They're always, of course, I just thought of George Carlin. They're pre-recorded. Well, when else are you going to record it afterwards?
It's all right. It's all right.
they're pre-recorded. And then like I record a monologue where I kind of talk about, observations of the weeks of that week, experiences, or just emotional content that I'm dealing with. And I'll talk about that for anywhere between 5 to 15 to 20 minutes with my partner, Sharon. And then it segues into the conversation with the guest that week. It usually lasts for anywhere between 45 minutes and an hour and 15. And people are always welcome, you included, to come back and just continue the conversation. If I have a returning guest, the first episode is usually about their story, what their passion, what their bliss, what their mission that they feel called to in this experience on what I like to call Starship Earth. And then anytime they return, we can go deeper into their story, or we just kind of just go back and forth about, our personal experiences with our mission and observations that we have about life. And I love doing it. I started it. It was purely for my own mental health. I've been writing a book. And the reason why I've been writing a book for close to a decade, it's been 8 years, is because I wasn't a writer. I was really bad at grammar, extremely bad at the written word. I was much more of a visual artist, and the podcast helped me find my voice. And when you're locked into a room trying to tell a story to share with the world in written form, you're not around people. And so the podcast allowed me to interact with people, interact with strangers, and just, what's your experience in life, and can you teach me, and because there's a lot of people that come on that like, I don't have their life experience. I'm never gonna have their life experience. Yeah. And the closest I can get to it is to just sit down, and whether it's on Zoom, because there is this thing called the pandemic happening right now, or whether it was face to face in the same sharing the same space, and just listening to their story and talking about it and asking them questions about it. I love it. It's one of my happy places, even when it's exhausting. And it's only exhausting because I'm like, I'm gonna record 5 conversations this week, it's gonna be great. And sometimes, like on a Saturday or Sunday, there's been times where I had like 3 people come over in one day. And I mean, when you share yourself in conversation, it can be tiring.
Sure. And I hear the passion and the joy that it gives you, even though it's exhausting sometimes. And I appreciate that. And again, I want to encourage people to tune in, to listen in to whatever it is that they do, to go to Inner Monologue.
Well, you go to risephoenix.org. Rise, once again, that's the philosophical banner. The bike ride was formed under that. Inner Monologue is a project of Rise, just like my book is a project of Rise. And there will be many projects of Rise until I am removed from this experience here in this reality. And so you can go to risephoenix.org. We're on the Inner Monologue has a page on there. If you want to learn more about the guests and links to their websites, if they have any. But Inner Monologue is on iTunes, it's on iHeartRadio, it's on Stitcher, it's on Spotify, it's on all podcast platforms.
It's very cool, very good.
I dig it.
And so the last thing, we're going to come to an end here.
All right.
The last thing, because I think this is probably the longest interview I've ever done, and people will probably turn it off halfway through or fall asleep.
No, I'm long-winded.
Well, we both are. And the thing is, I'm used to people falling asleep halfway through on my talks. So, okay. So what is your greatest joy, Thomas?
Okay, this is going to sound weird. That's such a weird question. It's not weird. I have a lot of great joys.
Either it's weird or it isn't, Thomas. What?
Like, I have a lot of great joys. You know what I mean? Like, one of my favorite things, and it took me a long time to understand this, my greatest joy is me. Because how are you going to enjoy anything until you enjoy yourself? It's like love. Like, how are you going to love somebody, like truly love somebody, if you don't love yourself? It all starts with you. Like, my spiritual practice is self-awareness. I'm stuck with me from cradle to grave. If the one relationship I am stuck with, Sharon, if she gets fed up with my BS, she can leave. My parents eventually are going to die. People fade in and out of our lives for whatever ever, for whatever reason, experiential, situational, benevolent. I don't know, but they do. The only person I'm stuck with is me. And if I'm going to truly have any type of joy in this world, in within an experience with another person, with an experience with a place, with an experience with a book, a CD, some music, a movie, like I gotta dig myself. Otherwise, that other stuff, it's not gonna last. It's gonna burn out. It's gonna fizzle away. It's gonna crash and burn. Like my greatest joy is myself. And it took me 35 years before I even understood that that's a concept. And it's I don't think it's selfish. I don't think that it's cocky. I don't think that, it's disrespectful. Like, if you want me to love you, if you want me to truly love who you are, then I have to have space to understand, have compassion for, accept, love, and be filled with joy of who I am.
I am glad that you are learning to love yourself and to be your greatest joy. I'm glad for that. Now, what is your greatest accomplishment?
I don't know if I've to date.
No, Thomas. 10 years
What are
from
you
now.
gonna?
What are you?
Like, there's a lot of
Are you
things I'd like to
pre-recording
accomplish.
again? What's going on here?
It's just nice callback. It would be it would be really easy to say that my greatest accomplishment was riding my bike across the country.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to go back to the joy. My greatest accomplishment has been allowing me the space to find joy in myself. Because I'm telling you, like, worldly and awareness, like the lacking of worldly and self-awareness, is an epidemic.
Yeah.
And it, to me, and this isn't to say, oh, I'm better than anybody else, because when you are on a journey of self-discovery, there's no dogma, there's no foundation, there's no support system. Like, you have to go out and create that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I totally get it. Going within and trying to, and being honest with, like, the ugly truth of what you are, like, that's it. It's like taking some LSD or mushrooms and you're going to have a bad trip.
Mm-hmm.
It can be dark. It can be scary, but like, it'll be the best thing that you can do for yourself. And I'm still learning. That's the beauty about it. You're not going to learn from it. Yeah, I mean, you're going to learn from it. You're not going to finish learning from it. Like, you evolve with each new experience and each new person that comes into your life, and you consistently hand your ass to yourself.
Yeah.
And it just happens, and it becomes a beautiful moment when you're like, I'm stubborn. I'm a Scorpio. I am the biggest a-hole. I can bring Sharon in here and she can give you a laundry list of why I can be a ruthless SOB. Then we'd have to ask her for another laundry list of, well, so why are you with a guy? But it's taken a long journey to be able to recognize when I'm being triggered, and to recognize why I'm being triggered, and to understand that, like, I have the power in this moment to de-escalate myself,
Mm-hmm.
making this a better experience for me and whoever I'm interacting with.
Yeah.
And that isn't going to happen until you start to, like, ask yourself some important questions. Who am I? Why do I do what I do? Why do I think the way I think? Why do I respond and react the way that I do? What makes me tick? And that is very scary and very beautiful and very, very freeing. And it's a privilege to be able to do that, because some people don't even have that privilege, and I recognize that.
Yeah, there's some people they
They're
don't
just they're
they
just
don't
in
have
survival mode.
yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And you know, Thomas, with all the things, all the rhetoric now around around police reform, one of the things I don't hear is the capacity for insight and being able to de-escalate yourself. Wouldn't that be the starting point for police reform to move from warrior to guardian? Is to be able to de-escalate yourself so that you can de-escalate, or at least potentially de-escalate any situation that you're in as a police officer. I don't hear any rhetoric about that, and
No.
I would encourage that to happen.
And if you really want to make an absolute effect on that, you have to start teaching people when they enter school.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
There should be a class that builds upon itself from grade to grade, and it's just called self-awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the next class is how to balance a checkbook. Okay. Such profound wisdom and honesty and vulnerability. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn off the recording. I cannot thank you enough for making time to do this. I think people will respond to this in a great way. And you and I think we could talk about anything. We could talk about Marvel movies. We could talk about Walking Dead. We could talk about the mythology of all of that, and the way
we could talk about the connection between comedy, stand-up comedy, and clergymen.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Yeah, and part of the problem with clergymen is they're funny and don't know it. Now those are really problem clergy. Okay, yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm going to turn off the record button and then
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. I
sum
appreciate
up
you.
this. Okay, Shadow Rock appreciates you, and I have a feeling we'll be back again. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you.